The most influential political book ever written was written by a man who failed at politics. He lost his job. He was arrested. He was tortured. He died without seeing his book published. And yet, 500 years later, presidents, CEOs, generals, and dictators are still studying what he wrote. Why? Because before he wrote The Prince, Niccolò Machiavelli witnessed something most people never do. He watched power from the inside, and what he learned changed history. Florence in 1498 was not the romantic city of art and wine we imagine today. It was a battlefield disguised as a republic, wealthy banking families pulling strings behind a thin curtain of democracy. At the center of this machine sat a 29-year-old bureaucrat, not noble, not wealthy, just sharp-eyed and recently appointed to a position that would change everything: Second Chancellor of the Florentine Republic. His name was Niccolò Machiavelli. For the next 14 years, every spy report, every war budget, every desperate diplomatic letter crossed his desk. He didn't just witness politics from a distance, he lived inside its daily machinery. The bribes, the delays, the cowardice no one wrote down in official records. A friar named Girolamo Savonarola had ruled Florence for 4 years, not with an army, but with sermons. He preached against corruption, against luxury, against greed. The people adored him. They called him a prophet. Then the Pope threatened to excommunicate the entire city if Savonarola wasn't silenced. And the same people who once called him a prophet turned on him within weeks. Because faith without force, Machiavelli realized, is the most fragile thing in the world. Savonarola was arrested and executed in the public square. Machiavelli stood in that crowd. He didn't see a martyr. He saw a lesson. A man with only words and no weapons will always fall to a man with both. Florence wanted the port city of Pisa back. Without it, Florentine merchants had no direct access to the sea. Every shipment, every trade deal, every coin of profit had to pass through someone else's hands first. So the city hired the era's most famous mercenary commander, Paolo Vitelli, to take it by force. Machiavelli watched the siege unfold. The walls were breached, soldiers were close enough to see inside the city. Victory was hours away. And then, Vitelli stopped. He pulled his army back. No betrayal, no enemy bribe, just simple math. If the war ended, his paycheck ended too. The siege dragged on for years after that single stalled attack. Florence kept paying, merchants kept losing trade routes, the treasury kept bleeding. All because the man hired to finish the job had no reason to finish it. A man who is loyal to your money is never loyal to your cause. Machiavelli's conclusion shaped one of his most famous warnings: hired armies protect their salary, not their employer. In peace, they're a burden. In war, they're a liability. Then came the man who would define the entire book, Cesare Borgia. The illegitimate son of Pope Alexander VI, Cesare carved out his own state through sheer speed and ruthlessness, conquering cities across central Italy with frightening efficiency. Florence, terrified, sent Machiavelli to study him up close. When Machiavelli entered Borgia's headquarters, he found something he didn't expect. A second man, hunched over maps at the same table. Leonardo da Vinci, hired as Borgia's military engineer, mapping enemy fortresses and their weak points. Two men, working in the same tent for the same ruthless prince. One was studying the human body, the other was studying the state. Neither liked what he found underneath the surface. When Borgia conquered the Romagna region, he needed order fast. So he installed a brutal enforcer named Ramiro de Orco and gave him total authority. Ramiro ruled through fear, executions, seized property. The region was tamed, but the people's hatred toward Borgia's regime grew with every punishment. So Borgia made a calculated move. On the morning of December 26th, the people of Cesena gathered in the square. Ramiro's body was found there, executed on Borgia's own order. The very man who had carried out Borgia's harshest policies, eliminated to redirect the people's anger away from the prince himself. The crowd, according to historical accounts, felt both relief and fear in the same breath. Let someone else deliver the cruelty. Keep your own hands clean for mercy. That single morning became one of the most studied lessons in the entire book. But Machiavelli drew a careful line here, one most people miss. He didn't admire cruelty for its own sake. He compared Borgia to an ancient tyrant named Agathocles, who used violence constantly without purpose. Machiavelli's verdict was blunt. Non-stop cruelty creates only hatred. A single, decisive, necessary act, used once and never repeated, can be forgiven by people. A pattern of brutality cannot. Borgia's rapid rise had frightened his own military commanders. Several formed a secret alliance against him. Outnumbered, Borgia chose deception over confrontation. He wrote them warm letters. He offered raises. He apologized for past conflicts. They believed him. On the night they came to celebrate a fake peace, none of them were armed. They were surrounded the moment they walked into the room. Machiavelli, present that night, described a strange detail in Borgia's expression. A smile, with something colder underneath it. The lesson Machiavelli took from this moment was uncomfortable, but specific. A promise should only be kept if keeping it still serves your interest. Loyalty, in his account of politics, was conditional, not moral. Borgia's entire empire depended on two things that weren't his own: his father's money and France's army. When Pope Alexander VI suddenly died, that foundation collapsed overnight. Borgia, already gravely ill at the same time, lost his protection within weeks. The new pope was his enemy. He was arrested, exiled, and eventually died in a minor skirmish years later in Spain. Half of power, Machiavelli wrote, depends on fortune. The other half depends on what you build with your own hands, not someone else's. Machiavelli had seen enough. Mercenaries failed. Borrowed power failed. So he proposed something radical for his time. Arm the ordinary citizens. Build a national militia instead of paying foreign swords. The Florentine elite mocked the idea openly. Soldiers made of farmers, one critic reportedly scoffed. Men who had never held anything sharper than a plow expected to stand against trained killers. Machiavelli pushed forward anyway. He walked into villages himself. He told farmers, men who had never been trusted with a weapon in their lives, that their own land was worth defending with their own hands. Some refused, afraid of being punished later for daring to carry arms. Others showed up out of curiosity, then stayed once they realized no one had ever asked for their loyalty before, only their taxes. He trained them, gave them discipline, gave them, for the first time, a reason to believe the city belonged to them too. And it worked. The peasant militia succeeded where hired soldiers had failed for over a decade. Pisa finally surrendered. For one shining moment, the men everyone had laughed at had just done what professional soldiers couldn't. But victory built false confidence. When a powerful Spanish army marched on Florence years later, that same citizen militia faced professional soldiers for the first time and panicked. The city of Prato fell within hours, with devastating losses among its people. Florence's republic collapsed. The Medici family returned to power, backed by foreign swords. Within months, Machiavelli's career was over. He was removed from office, then accused, without solid evidence, of plotting against the new regime. He was thrown into prison. There he experienced one of the era's standard interrogation methods, his arms bound and repeatedly strained on a pulley system, a technique known to dislocate joints. He endured this several times before his eventual release. It was in that cell, stripped of power, status, and physical strength, that Machiavelli arrived at the rawest belief behind his entire book. Justice does not protect the innocent. Justice, in his account, is simply a privilege the powerful grant themselves. Stripped of his position, Machiavelli retreated to a small farmhouse. By day, he chopped wood and played cards with villagers. By night, he put on his old formal robes, alone in an empty room, and wrote as if addressing a king. That manuscript became The Prince. Most people believe Machiavelli wrote, "The ends justify the means." He never wrote that sentence. What he actually argued was narrower and arguably more disturbing. People don't judge your methods, they judge your results. If you win, your methods are forgiven. If you lose, even good intentions are condemned. It wasn't a moral permission slip. It was a cold observation about how the public actually behaves, then and arguably now. He also asked the most famous question in the book: is it better to be loved or feared? His answer still makes people uncomfortable 5 centuries later. According to Machiavelli, love depends on the other person's self-interest, and self-interest changes the moment it's convenient to betray you. Fear, built through consistent and fairly applied consequences, tends to hold longer. His specific caution: a leader could be feared, but should avoid being hated, and the fastest way to be hated, in his account, was interfering with people's property or their families. In his final years, Machiavelli watched a catastrophe he had warned against for decades. Unpaid, undisciplined foreign troops sacked Rome itself, a city he believed had grown arrogant and unprepared. Shortly after, Florence's republic was briefly restored, and Machiavelli, hopeful, ran for his old government position one final time. He lost, overwhelmingly. Even the younger generation he had personally mentored didn't vote for him. His own writings, by then associated with manipulation and tyranny, had quietly destroyed his reputation. Weeks later, Machiavelli died of severe illness. He never saw his book published. It was released 5 years after his death and immediately banned by the church. And that ban didn't kill the book. It made it irresistible. Historical accounts describe multiple European monarchs publicly condemning Machiavelli's ideas, while privately keeping a copy close at hand.
So, why does a 500-year-old Florentine bureaucrat still matter today? Because Machiavelli didn't describe the world we wish existed. He described the one that actually does, the one running quietly behind boardrooms, governments, and yes, even our daily lives. Decisions about who we trust and who we don't.